She couldn't stop thinking, even when she wanted to. Her mind raced with endless thoughts, dissecting every word, every action, and every decision she made. The quiet moments felt like a trap, a chance for her mind to spiral further. It was as if she was cursed with the inability to just be. Every conversation replayed in her mind, every gesture analyzed, every possible outcome considered. But as much as she tried to escape it, the overthinking only grew stronger, turning ordinary moments into overwhelming situations. She wasn't just worried, she was trapped in a mental maze. And with every thought that spun around, the clearer it became. This wasn't just a habit. It was a part of who she had become. It started subtly, like a whisper in the back of her mind. At first, it didn't seem like much, just the occasional thought, a fleeting moment of doubt. But after the breakup, it grew louder, insistent, and impossible to ignore. Every time she closed her eyes, her mind became a whirlwind, spinning with questions and self-criticism. What went wrong? Was it something she said? Was she not enough? She replayed every moment, analyzing each word, each gesture, each silence. It was as if the breakup wasn't just an event. It was a puzzle she needed to solve, every piece a clue to understanding where things had fallen apart. The small things that once went unnoticed became monumental. A text that went unanswered for an hour sent her spiraling into thoughts of rejection. A casual conversation with a friend now felt like a test of her worth. She began to dissect her actions, wondering if she'd said or done something that pushed people away. Even the mundane became fraught with significance. Her mind couldn't rest, constantly seeking meaning in everything. Something so innocent could turn into a complex web of overthinking. But it wasn't just about the breakup anymore. The habit of overanalyzing seeped into every part of her life. Her work, her friendships, even her daily routines were overshadowed by this constant need to re-examine, to second-guess herself. She started to feel like she was walking through life with a magnifying glass, focusing on every flaw, every mistake, every what if in the hopes of uncovering some hidden truth. The spiral had begun, and though she tried to stop it, each thought only seemed to pull her deeper into the whirlwind. The overthinking, once manageable, now controlled her thoughts, leaving her trapped in an endless cycle of doubt and uncertainty. As the days passed, the weight of her overthinking began to isolate her from the world around her. She stopped reaching out to friends, avoiding calls, and canceling plans. She didn't want to burden anyone with the endless stream of worries and doubts that consumed her every thought. It felt easier to retreat into herself, to stay in the comfort of her own mind, where at least she understood the chaos. But as the days turned into weeks, that comfort quickly morphed into loneliness. Her friends noticed her absence, but they didn't understand. To them, the breakup was a thing of the past, a chapter already closed. They couldn't grasp why she couldn't just move on. Every time they reached out, they were met with polite excuses or vague responses. "I'm just tired," she would say, though in reality, it was the mental exhaustion of overthinking that drained her. She didn't have the energy to explain it, to make them see how her thoughts were suffocating her. Each social interaction became a battlefield. What if she said something stupid? What if they judged her? What if they knew how insecure and unsure she felt? These questions ran through her mind like a constant loop, making even a casual hangout feel like a high-stakes event. It was easier to stay home, where she could control her environment, even if it meant being alone. She began to feel like an outsider in her own life. She could hear her friends laughing and talking about their own experiences, but it all felt so distant, as though she were watching it unfold from the outside. The more she pulled away, the more she felt like she was disappearing, swallowed whole by the spiral of her own overthinking. The constant cycle of overthinking began to take its toll on her in ways she hadn't anticipated. At first, it was subtle, a lingering sense of fatigue that crept in after sleepless nights filled with restless thoughts. But soon, It became undeniable. Her body was exhausted, yet her mind never stopped. The endless mental chatter drained her more than anything physical ever could. Every day felt like running on empty, yet she couldn't stop the thoughts from consuming her. Sleep, once a refuge, had turned into another battleground. She would lie awake for hours, tossing and turning, her mind spinning with the same questions, doubts, and what-ifs that haunted her all day. She tried everything to quiet her thoughts: warm teas, calming music, even counting sheep, but nothing worked. No matter how tired her body was, her mind remained awake, relentless in its search for answers. In the morning, she would drag herself out of bed, barely feeling rested, and stumble through the day in a haze. The fatigue seeped into every part of her life. At work, she struggled to focus. Meetings blurred together as her mind wandered, obsessing over details she couldn't control. At home, she felt detached from everything, too tired to enjoy hobbies or connect with others. Even simple tasks, like cooking or running errands, felt like monumental efforts. Her friends began to notice the change, though they didn't know how to help. She snapped more often, her patience thin, not because she was angry, but because she was mentally and physically drained. She had become so used to the exhaustion that she didn't even know how to stop it. The cycle of overthinking had become a permanent state of being, and she couldn't remember what it felt like to feel truly rested. One night, after another sleepless stretch, she sat alone in her room, surrounded by the quiet stillness that always seemed to amplify the chaos inside her head. For the first time in months, she paused, really paused, and asked herself, "Why am I doing this?" It wasn't the first time she'd asked, but this time, the question felt different. This time, it echoed in a way that made her see the truth she had been avoiding. She realized that her overthinking wasn't just a reaction to the breakup. It was a pattern, a habit she had been carrying for much longer than she'd admitted to herself. It had shaped her entire life, influencing her decisions, her relationships, and even her sense of self-worth. She saw how it had affected her friendships, how she had often distanced herself because she was too consumed by worry to connect with others. She had pulled away from people, not just out of fear of rejection, but because she feared judgment over her constant need for reassurance. But it went deeper than just her relationships. The overthinking had become her default mode. Every situation was met with a wave of analysis, questioning every detail, every outcome. She hadn't realized it, but her thoughts had taken control. She was no longer living in the present moment. She was trapped in an endless loop of what-ifs and maybes. It wasn't the breakup that had broken her, but the way she had allowed her mind to spiral out of control. In that moment, she understood that this wasn't just a phase. It was part of who she had become, and it wasn't something she could keep ignoring. But the realization also sparked something within her. The first flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, she could change. The realization was only the beginning. Acknowledging her struggle with overthinking was the first step, but the journey to healing would be far from easy. It required patience, self-compassion, and a willingness to face the very habits that had shaped her for so long. She knew she couldn't simply snap out of it. The overthinking had been a part of her for too long, woven into the fabric of her daily life. She started small. Every morning, she dedicated a few minutes to mindfulness, just sitting in silence and focusing on her breath. It wasn't much, but it was a way to ground herself in the present moment. At first, it was difficult. Her mind would wander, dragging her back into the spiral of doubts and worries. But she didn't give up. She gently redirected her thoughts, reminding herself that it was okay to let go of control, that not every thought needed to be analyzed. She also began journaling, writing down her thoughts as they came and then questioning their validity. Was this thought truly helpful? Was it based in reality? Or was it just a story her mind was telling her? Slowly, she started to identify patterns: the negative self-talk, the need for approval, the fear of making mistakes. With each realization, she made a conscious effort to challenge those thoughts, to replace them with more balanced, compassionate perspectives. The healing wasn't linear. Some days were easier than others, and there were setbacks. But with each step forward, she felt more in control. She learned that overthinking didn't define her. It was a habit, not her identity. As time passed, she began to embrace uncertainty, finding peace in not having all the answers. The spiral no longer controlled her. She was learning to live in the present, one mindful moment at a time.
You